Thank you. MEC is a pool development fund. Pool development funds don't exist anymore. However, we have grandfather status. So as a PDF for most investors in Australia, it's capital gains tax-free and dividend tax-free. The government set up these structures so that people would invest into projects that they might not otherwise do so. And we, of course, have utilised this structure to invest into Advent Energy, and MEC is the largest shareholder in Advent Energy. When you look at the structure of our group of companies, you look at MEC sits here listed on the ASX, 45% shareholder in Advent Energy. There are common directors in BPH Energy, and that controls 27.4% of Advent Energy. And then Grandbridge, where I'm also a director and chairman, has around a 10% interest into Advent Energy. The Talbot Group, I presented to Ken Talbot, and after about 20 minutes of presentation, he said, yes, I'm in. It did take another 3 months, but in fact, it was a good indicator of the way in which Ken went about his business, and sorely missed in terms of the resource investments in Australia. In this group last year, we raised just over $50 million. And the strategy that we've been following in the way in which we've done this is to bring people like the Talbot Group into as direct investors into Advent, and for retail investors, they can come in either through MEC or through BPH, or in fact Grandbridge if they were to choose to do so. What do we have in the investments underneath it? So Asset Energy is a wholly owned subsidiary, and we have an 85% interest in the offshore PEP 11 project. I'll talk more about that. We also are a holder of 8.3% in 325 offshore Exmouth, and we have 100% uniquely of 386 and RL1 in the far north of Western Australia and in the Northern Territory just across the border. What you're seeing here is in fact a group of projects where we have exposure to multi-TCF targets of a conventional and unconventional nature, and I'll give you more details of those as I go through the presentation. We are also a top 20 shareholder in Central Petroleum. Back one. So, onshore Bonaparte. Bonaparte, of course, the proven petroleum basin. We're here just offshore Exmouth, and again, Sydney is also a proven petroleum basin. In fact, the technical success rate in the Sydney Basin over 100 years of drilling is about 63%, which is quite high in relation to international standards. But nonetheless, you can look here and say multi-TCF structural targets here in the offshore, and now, as a result of the work that we've done, multi-TCF potential targets in the onshore, combined with conventional proven gas resources in the EP386 and RL1. Similar slide to John, but it does show, and I'll just reiterate it. So you have here in the Cooper BG, Hess in the Beetaloo, Canning, and for a while there we had this slide there where we said, well, there is this unconventional resource here in the southern extension, the onshore Bonaparte. A few weeks after we put out our study on the onshore Bonaparte, in fact, Beach came in, and I'm going to show you where they came in and what that means for us. And of course, Beach, you know, announced very recently a 2 TCF discovery as a result of their program in the Cooper, and the newspaper gave that a valuation of north of $30 billion in one report that I saw. So We then look at what's the unconventional or shale gas market done in the US, and it's gone from 2% of total supply of gas to around 23% of total supply of gas, which shows the relative importance and the reason why you're seeing these majors coming into Australia, because you don't have one without the other. So when we did our initial study, we gave it an OGIP at the low end of 19 TCF, of 65 TCF at best, and at the high of 141 TCF. And in addition to that, and of course I will address this issue, we drilled a dry hole offshore Sydney. We are in dispute with Fugro Site Services over the work that they did. We released a detailed study, a detail on that commercial dispute that we have for Fugro Site Services. We did 4 site surveys over areas in the offshore PEP 11 area. We were, in the end result, only able to drill one of those areas because we only got sufficient data out of one of those to proceed to drill. In that particular drill site, we had very good indications of gas. We drilled through 40 metres of reservoir quality sandstone. Importantly, we drilled into the Permian at the bottom of the hole, and we also found mature for hydrocarbons there. I'll touch more on that and the significance later. So most recently we've had RISC do an independent analysis of our Weber field in the Northern Territory. When that was done, we got an 18 BCF, and again, a mean figure, sorry. And again, the significance of that I'll take you through in relation to the development of the Ord. Here's Kununurra, here is Ord Phase 1. Just here is Ord Phase 2, and the government is spending $200 million on Ord Phase 2. They are bringing in this expenditure of $100 million on the highway just next to us. They're coming within 15 kilometres of our existing proven conventional gas fields in Vienta and Wagon Creek. That puts us in a position where we can commercialise those fields, and previously people in this area here drilled, they looked for oil, they kept on finding gas, and of course gas at 50 cents a unit as it was then, and you just seen the figures from John, it's more around $9 a unit at the moment. So in fact the gas price and the infrastructure has moved to our very substantial benefit here. You know, of course, that the Bonaparte's a very extensive basin, and we're in this southern onshore area, and of course whilst we may have gone in there just for the conventional side, it's the unconventional side of it in the shale gas that gives us the greater prospectivity in the future looking forward. So you can see, in fact, Bonaparte, Garamilla, Ningbing, Wagon Creek, Vienta, in fact, substantial technical discoveries, but of course Vienta, Wagon Creek and Weber were conventional gas discoveries. They come around the edge in fact, if you like, so they were looking on the pinch out on the edge of the basin for these discoveries, and they found them, of course, in oil in some of those as well. Why? So what's the significance of Beach? Beach have in fact gone into this joint venture on the other side of the border from us, but also interestingly surrounding our Weber field as an existing field. We are again fortunate. There's been around $150 million, we estimate, of expenditure in the wells that have been drilled here. We picked up Wagon Creek and Vienta at a very attractive price because the gas price was low and shale gas hadn't come onto the market at the time. So it meant that we've just been able to go back in and do workover on Vienta and Wagon Creek. As you see, Vienta flowed at 2 million a day, and then dropped away to 500,000 a day. When these wells, that is Wagon Creek and Vienta, were drilled, they went virtually into the wet season. So both wells were left improperly completed to a degree where we've in fact had to pump those out before we've gone back into those. So when you look at the results that come out of Vienta, our time will be spent working out whether in fact we're in a tight gas or in fact we've got a damaged wellbore. But nonetheless we see the gas there. The better news for us in terms of the most recent work is the announcement that we made this morning from the work that was completed in Kununurra or just up in our areas last Friday, where we flowed over 1 million cubic feet a day. The significance of that is that it came from around only 300 metres subsurface. And as one of the guys on the rig said, you could actually put that into a pipeline and let it flow by itself for the 15 kilometres down into the area. So conventional sandstone reservoir. Now I'll take you through to the other aspects. So I touched on this, but this is Geoscience Australia. So what they're saying is here is the source pod for the gas or the hydrocarbons in the onshore extension of the Bonaparte Basin in this area. In fact, barely touched by drilling to date. But we're in a terrific position, I'm about to show you that, because in fact we picked up the results of the drilling in each of these other wells, that is Bonaparte, Garramilla and Ningbing, and we've been able to analyse that. This is yet another independent technical representation, again from Geoscience Australia, showing here the source pod. For better detail, you can just go to our ASX website. I presented this morning, and you'll be able to see this presentation on the ASX under MMR code, and again with a similar presentation showing the source pod to the north of the basin, in fact where our permit is, and that's why, of course, why Beach have come in across the border from us. So what's the significance of Ord Phase 2? And I showed you that. There you can see Vienta, and here this is Ord Phase 2. So in fact the entirety of the Ord Phase 2 comes right up and abuts our existing Vienta field. Now, in addition to that, so there's a highway being built up through here and into here. Just here is the Sauber Hills project, and many of you will know that. Sauber Hills is the largest undeveloped open cut depth base metals project in Australia. Their words, not mine. But in fact also up in here is another significant base metals project, and also up in this area here there are further projects underway. Kununurra is forecast to double in size in the very near future. So there is significant unmet demand for hydrocarbon from quite a wide variety of, or energy I should say, from quite a wide variety of interested parties, and we're discussing with the most appropriate of those how to go about commercialising this asset. We're in a position where our capital costs to do that are relatively low, and of course because the government's bought the infrastructure to us, we're in a good position. I should say as well, so Ord Phase 2, Ord Phase 3, Ord Phase 4, Ord Phase 5, and in fact there's an Ord Phase 6, all of which are intended to go forward. Ord Phase 2, for instance, is being sold as unpowered lots. So you can see how we might readily commercialise the conventional resource that we have there. 18 BCF is where we put it in here. This slide I won't stay on, but you can look it up further if you wish to. However, this is the interesting point. So Vienta, elevated gas shows over the mid, upper and lower Milligan section. And so you have in fact in the shale area 850 metres of elevated gas shows. So what we've got here is conventional reservoirs with the shale above and below us. Same thing in Weber 4. 350 metres of elevated gas shows, in fact, in the shale, again with the conventional reservoir, sandstone reservoirs. Same thing in Ningbing, 650 metres of elevated elevated gas shows in the shale. Same thing here in Pincombe. Same thing in Wagon Creek with 400 metres. In Ningbing 2 and Pincombe, again 650 metres. This is the Western Australian Government assessing the Maryborough Basin. We looked at the Maryborough and we compared that to the onshore Bonaparte, risked GIP and risk recoverable in terms of where it is. You can see here, in fact, we're looking at the this area here in terms of our tight gas and shale gas plays. And so, in fact, again, when you look at the Garamilla and I'll knock something. Escape. Thanks, sir. We'll try again. So, Ningbing, gas peaks in the tight gas sands. I've learnt my lesson. I'm going to stop pressing the arrows and I'll go through these. Garamilla, tight gas in the Cockatoo. Wagon Creek, again, tight gas in the Burt Range Formation. So, substantial prospectivity in terms of unconventional gas in the 386 and RL1, and that's where we'll focus, but in the shorter term we'll look at commercialising the conventional gas reservoirs. John showed this slide, so I won't stay with it, but in fact when you look at the offshore Sydney Basin, we didn't get to drill the structural plays. The structural plays have an estimate independently assessed of 6 TCF in the structural plays. I've told you about what we discovered after the drilling, and we drilled nervously. No, we drilled up here rather than in the conventional areas where we initially sought to do. Why were we there? Because where Santos, in fact, picked up this ground, PEP 11 offshore Sydney in the first instance, Santos identified the baleen target, and the baleen target is in fact at about 2,500 metres sub-sea floor here. But as we reprocessed the seismic that we got from Bounty, our joint venture partner, and the seismic was acquired in 2004, we got much better clarity out of that set of digital seismic, and we were able to see things like HRDZs, apparent AVOs, and also, of course, apparent flat spots in particular on the seismic lines that were close to or under the baleen area. So what we see is chimneys together with gas mounds, and more importantly, we see the attributes that you see associated with major gas discoveries, both within Australia here in the Gorgon and in the Ormond Lange field offshore New South Wales. So when you look at Ormond Lange, 14 TCF field at the top of a major slump event with a major pockmark field associated with its flank. When you look at the Gorgon gas field, again, that's a 3D representation. You see shelf slumping as well as a major pockmark field associated with a 40 TCF discovery. When you look at the offshore Sydney Basin, in fact, you see this same shelf slumping, and you also see, in fact, these gas features all the way up and down the continental shelf. When we presented in June, we presented the geochemical analysis that was done during this work in the offshore area, and the geochemical analysis, whilst we didn't have sufficient points to get statistical validity, was amongst the highest that the chemical analysis group had seen anywhere in the world. that fits with the other components that we saw out of the other work that's been done on geochemical analysis offshore Sydney. So we want to go back to here, and that will be our target in terms of, so in other words, we want to go back to the structural plays within the area. Strong board, very good expertise from our international experts and national experts. Thank you.